Today's topic is, does Satan exist? So, let's see what Swamiji has to say about this. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. The Bible tells us in chapter 4 of the Gospel of St. Matthew, "Then, after the baptism, was Jesus led up of the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted of the devil." To most modern minds, this passage seems quaintly obsolete. Psychologists would say, have said, in fact, that the temptation of Jesus, if it occurred at all, was purely psychological. They call it a projection of desires lurking in his own subconscious mind. The subconscious plays a strong part, certainly, even if not a unique one, in any testing the spiritual seeker must undergo. The Bhagavad Gita, in dealing with this undeniable reality, quotes Arjuna in the 3rd chapter, and then Sri Krishna's reply. "Yet tell me, teacher," said Arjuna, by what force doth man go to his ill, unwilling, as if one pushed him in that path?" And Krishna replied, "Desire it is, passion it is, born of the darkness, which pusheth him. Mighty of appetite, sinful and strong is this, man's enemy." Yet even Krishna describes passion as born of the darkness. The fact is, as Paramahansa Yogananda wrote in Autobiography of a Yogi, all thoughts vibrate eternally in the cosmos. Thoughts are universally and not individually rooted. A truth cannot be created, but only perceived. Psychology? Yes. But psychology attuned to currents of consciousness that pervade the entire universe, attracted by each of us according to our own personal inclinations. Yogananda, quoted in The Path, said, "I used to think Satan was only a human invention, but now I know, and add my testimony to that of others who lived before me, that Satan is a reality. He is a universal, conscious force whose sole aim is to keep all beings bound to the wheel of delusion. We should take pains, then, to attract uplifting currents of universal consciousness, and to avoid attracting the negative, which, disease that it is, can infect our thoughts, even while it leads us to believe that our thoughts are purely our own. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind." So, when I was new on the path, Swami Kriyananda, I was walking up the stairs with him one day. He asked for my arm for support. And he said to me that, "I know that you don't like to think about it, but it is a truth that there is a dark force, we can call it a satanic force, that does exist and that does try to pull us down." And he was absolutely correct. I just thought it was more negativity, and I just didn't want to think about whether it actually existed or not. Of course, it's also very scary to think that if God exists, then Satan exists. But you need not be afraid, because yes, there's duality, but there's an aspect of God that is even beyond duality. And that when all of the cards are shown, that it's not Satan who rules the universe, but it's God. Yet and you could even say that God created Satan. And when I hear the word Satan, I think in the Christian way of some fellow with red skin and horns and going to put a curse on us or something like that. But we have to go beyond personifying this and understand that it is a consciousness, that there is a force, and there's a force that is there's two forces constantly at battle within ourselves, actually. One force is trying to pull us downward, and one force is trying to make us go upwards. And it's good to become aware of the fact that there is a force, and a force that is much stronger than us, that is trying to pull us downward. And that our only real choice in this world is to offer ourselves into which current do we want to offer ourselves? Do we want to open ourselves up to? Do we want to open ourselves to this current that is trying to lift us back up into God, into eternal freedom? Or do we want to lift ourselves, actually not, let ourselves be pulled down and pretend like, well, it's not my fault. And there is some truth to it, actually, that it's not our fault. But at the end, we do have to take responsibility for our consciousness and in which direction are we turning our consciousness. I'll tell a story that Swamiji told, and then we'll talk more about that. And this story is in the New Path. And Swami Kriyananda had heard about disincarnate, or spirits that weren't in a body, tramp souls, you could call them, that wander around continuously in the ether. And Swamiji scientifically thought, do these things really exist? Are there really souls out there who are just waiting to take someone's body? And he thought, I'm going to actually try to find out if these things are true. And so, one night, he was dreaming, but he became conscious of the fact that he was dreaming. And so he called out, if there's a disincarnate entity, that if there's a tramp soul near, come. I want to see you, that I want to know what you're all about. And he said at that moment, in the dream, the floor, which in America they're made out of boards often, so he said the floorboards started vibrating and shaking, and he began to hear a sound of Om, but he said it was a very not pleasing sound of Om, and he began to feel a force pulling him out of his body. And at that point he got scared, and he called out, Om Guru. And then Master's light somehow came to him, and that force went away. The next morning when he woke up, one of his brother monks said, did you know what happened? Were you aware of what happened last night? And Swamiji said, no, what happened? And that man said that at our door there was a knocking. Hello, hello, open up. And the man said he was very afraid and said, who is it? And the voice knocking on the door said, I want Donald Walters. And I forget the exact story. I think the man said, well, I don't know where he is or something, and then that voice left. But that happened at the same time that Swamiji was having that dream. And so Swami told Master about it, and Master said, well, sometimes these things happen on the path. Master also gave other advice. I don't remember the exact words. But obviously through the advice that Swamiji began to understand not to play with these type of things, that we certainly don't want to play with the dark side like this. And I'll tell more stories about the dark side since it's the topic today. But an interesting point about that story there is then somewhere in that conversation with Master, Master didn't really know about it. And Swami thought that was so weird because he called out to the Guru, and it was the Guru who saved him, and so he started pushing Master on this point. And then Master said, when you are one with God, you are God. And then Swamiji obviously at that just let it lie. I understand that to mean that Master had so many things going on, but the conscious mind can only focus on one thing at a time. The superconscious can focus on everything, but I'm sure Master was taking care of things with his superconscious mind, but he didn't put his conscious mind on all of these different things all the time. Swami Kriyananda also would have similar experiences where people would come to him and say, you answered this question for me in a dream, or you helped me very much in this dream, do you remember it? And Swami would say no, that it was some higher aspect of his being that was doing that, and he wasn't always aware of it. That point needs to be made. I was making this earlier to a few friends in Kolkata, that it needs to be made because as we practice Kriya, as we grow on the spiritual path, we are refining our subconscious mind, and we're refining our astral body in ways that we can't always see. And so sometimes when we're wondering, am I really making progress? As long as we keep trying, that if there's a seed and you plant it and you want to grow a big mango tree, but if you dig up that seed every 2 days and say, is the mango tree growing? Then you'll disturb it and it won't grow. The same with your spiritual path. Yes, it's okay to wonder, am I making spiritual progress, and check. I'm not saying that. I'm not asking you for you to not think. But at the other point, that you have to have patience. and you have to just keep going, slow and steady steps in the right direction, daily meditation, daily prayer, chanting, daily devotion of offering your heart and opening your heart up to God more and more, and then God will come. Anyways, that all was about the story between Master and Swamiji. And the point, one very important point about this story before we move to the next one is, if you ever have some difficulty with a dark force, whether it's just in your mind or whether you actually see something or feel something, then the thing to do is call on the Masters right away. Whatever aspect of your God you want to call out to, call to that aspect of God, and God will come in and help you. The next story, Swami would often talk about this. It's a strange one, but there was an American man who was in Tibet, and he was with some, I wouldn't call them yogis because they were black magicians really, and they had learned how to use subtle aspects of spiritual techniques, but for bad. And this American was very curious about this, and so he asked them, can I come to your seance or your group gathering or whatever? And the Tibetan man he was with said, no, because you're American, they'll just kill you. And the American said, well, can I hide, or can there something? And the Tibetan said, okay, you can put this cowl over yourself and hide your face, but don't let them see you, or they will certainly just kill you. So this American man went to this gathering of all these black magicians, and they had a human thigh bone, and they played that as a flute, and then they knew the power of mantras and chants, and they had a particular chant, and they started chanting to Satan, and they got, I hope I'm not confusing two stories, but I believe that they were able to chant, and then a demon came in some kind of form, and then it would take on certain aspects of caricature, meaning that somehow if they chanted in some way that this demon would express lust and sexuality, or the demon would express greed. And then when they finally got the demon to appear, they got whatever power they needed from it. I don't know what they were doing with this power, the whole entire story. Then quickly they all got themselves together and started chanting a different mantra, and as one group mind they had to use all of their strength because they felt that that negative power was going to take over the whole group. They had to use all of their strength and banish that demon and push him back into the other world. A very strange story indeed. I tell this story because these forces do exist, and they're not ours to play with. That we do not want to play with the dark side, with negative forces. That I'm sure that these type of beings, these negative forces, could make us all types of promises to give us what we wanted very quickly. But God doesn't work like that. God lets us work slowly on our own selves, and whatever it is that we want, that God brings to us slowly. And in the reading that we had today, we saw that the root of all evil is actually desire. And so ultimately we want to learn how to get rid of all of our desires and learn to just live like a child in the fact that God is bringing us what we need and that God is the one who's doing everything. But again, the point of these stories is that we must learn to live more in the light, and we have to learn to live in the light consciously. And even if we make mistakes, it's okay. Just bring God back into those mistakes. And you don't even really have to ask God for forgiveness. He's already forgiven you. That you have to ask yourself for forgiveness, and you have to learn how to draw on God's power so that you have the strength not to make those mistakes again. And that's really the point of all of this, because yes, in the story that I told before, it was, that demon did come and take on personified form that people could see on that particular evening. But more than that form, that Swamiji in this reading was saying that this is consciousness, and all thoughts vibrate eternally in the cosmos. So the most negative, evil thought that you could ever think, or the most evil, negative deed you could ever do, it already exists in thought, and all of those thoughts are right here, right now. But the question becomes, which thoughts are we channeling? And how aware are we? Sometimes we're in our subconscious mind and thinking negative things. We're not even aware that we're thinking them. And we need to wake back up, realize consciously that we have been channeling those negative thoughts, and then refuse to become a channel for negative thoughts anymore. That we want to just keep going up and up and up, make sure that we are headed in the right direction. If there's time, I might tell a couple dreams that I've had about the dark side, but I'll certainly tell this first one. We'll see how much time we have. And in this dream, there was a person trying to attract me. It was actually a female trying to attract me, and she was saying, "Come, come." And I can't remember, trying to figure out, is this a friend or what's exactly trying to go on here? And it was part of my subconscious mind at that point, because I remember I had seen either an advertisement on television or on a billboard of this particular female, and I was trying to just see what is going on here. And as I was looking and tuning in, this female became a male figure and became Satan, like a personification of the most dark force you could ever imagine. And this force said, "Now you're all mine." And I had a picture of Master, this is all a dream, I had a picture of Master in my pocket, and I pulled that picture out, and out of the eyes of Master, out of that picture, shot this light onto the demon, and just like a movie, the demon kind of wilted up and turned into smoke or something and disappeared. But then this light, it became a superconscious light, and I could take this photograph of Master and I could shine it on absolutely anything. And I was shining it on a piece of artwork, and in superconsciousness, I could see every soul that had ever looked at that piece of artwork, but beyond that I could feel every emotion, every feeling that was invoked by that piece of artwork through all time. So any soul that had ever seen that piece of artwork, I got to feel their emotions as they saw it. I also got to feel the emotions of the artist who made that piece of artwork. It was like the piece of artwork was his consciousness solidified. And it was amazing to be able to see through time and feel everyone's feelings associated with this piece of artwork. And then I would take this light shining from Master's eyes on this photograph, and I shined it on many different things, on people, and I could know everything about them from the inside out, from a superconscious state. And it was a wonderful thing, that photograph, and to be able to go into that superconscious state in the dream. So we sometimes do touch into superconsciousness in dreams, and we have these dreams, and it goes into a state that's much beyond the subconscious mind and the astral world. And we begin to realize that there's much more. But these dreams, they feel very, very clear, and they feel more true than either this physical reality we know in the conscious realm or in the astral realm. So we can have these superconscious dreams. But the point of that particular dream was that I had to call on Master in order for his help. Another thing that I want to emphasize in this particular talk is that if you've ever drank alcohol in this incarnation or other intoxicants, I hope that you won't do it anymore, but people sometimes do feel as if they're just compelled, even against their own will, that they make a vow within themselves that they won't do these things anymore, and then somehow they find that the habit is too strong and they're doing it again. And Paramahansa Yogananda had a devotee, and he was a fairly good man, had enough good karma to want to learn Kriya, and had his life together enough that he was doing okay, but he still had this habit of drinking alcohol. And he would do Kriya with one hand, and then every once in a while take a drink out of the other hand. And his friends criticized him unmercilessly, without mercy, that's easier for me to say. His friends criticized him and said, "Look at you. You're an alcoholic. You're not ready to start meditating and walk this path to God. This won't work for you." And the man told his friends, who probably weren't really his friends since they were trying to pull him back down and just say, "Just drink anyways with us." They weren't trying to help uplift him into the light and get him out of these things. But anyway, those so-called friends told him, why bother with these things? But the man said, "Well, I know which direction I want to go, and I have not yet succeeded in stopping drinking, but I can do this positive thing of do my kriyas. And so I'll do these, and I'll just do the best I can and keep going towards God." And one day he was doing his kriyas, and he took a drink, and then he did some more kriyas, and the joy that came from kriyas, he didn't want to drink the alcohol anymore. He put it down, and he never went back to it again. It's a very inspiring story for us to keep doing the best we can in the right direction we can, and in time everything will work out. But the reason I brought up drinking alcohol anyways, is sometimes the alcohol is called spirits. And Paramahansa Yogananda said that as you drink alcohol, if you drink enough, that these disincarnate entities, these trapped souls, can come into your body and drive it around the same way that a thief could come into your car if you were to leave the keys in it and leave it open and not be anywhere near it. That a thief could come into the car and drive it around and take it wherever he wanted and drive it recklessly. And the same thing can happen to our physical bodies if we become numb and blank through intoxicants. Or here's another important point that all meditators should understand. When we meditate, normally you've been given a technique like Hong Sa or Kriya Yoga or whatever the technique is. And afterwards we tell you, after practicing your technique, sit in the silence. But this is a very important point. We shouldn't just passively open ourselves up and be receptive to any thoughts or any vibrations that might come along. That trapped souls are looking for people like that who are very passive. That even though we are trying to obtain a very still and calm mind in meditation, that after we do those techniques, we still must focus on something. We're trying to focus on the light, or focus on any sounds, positive, good sounding sounds of Om that we might hear in our right ear, or we're trying to focus on one of the 8 aspects of God, peace, power, love, joy, wisdom, anything like that. But remember, we're not trying to just go blank and passive and no mind. We're trying to go one-pointed mind and one-pointed focus on God. So remember that. I've only heard of a few people of ever having this problem. It's not something you have to fear. And the dark side works on fear. That if you fear something, you will attract it like a magnet. The same way love attracts, fear attracts. And the whole secret to getting out of this mess is not to let these thoughts come into your mind at all. The first time a negative thought comes in, that's the time to push it away and not let that thought come in anymore. And just bring in a mantra or chant. Swamiji said chanting Om Guru, that's a very good mantra. And you can just keep chanting Om Guru, Om Guru. And those negative thoughts, that they will go away. So I'll tell one more story about a dream I had, and then I'll go into one more aspect of this book that I wanted to get into. And then we'll close things up. This dream was that I was on a different planet, and it was a pretty highly evolved planet. And on that planet, the common greeting, rather than namaste, or as in America people shake hands, the greeting on that planet was that you would just put your spiritual eye to the spiritual eye of your friend, and then you do thought transfer, but even much more than that. Yes, this was a strange dream, but it was a sort of fun one. It was like, normally when we meet each other, we say, hey, how are you? And we talk a little bit about our day, and I had this good thing happen and bad thing happen, or whatever. And on this particular planet, we would put our spiritual eye to each other. There was no need for talking. It was just like a direct download into each other's spirit and soul of exactly what was going on, way deeper than words could ever communicate. The thing was, you only did this greeting with close friends, that because such an exchange of magnetism was done, that you were really opening up your soul and your heart to your friends. So I think people understood magnetism better in this planet, in this dream. Anyways, you did this with your close friends. Now, this is where dreams get strange, and this wasn't completely a superconscious dream, so some of it's just silly. But in this particular dream, there was a McDonald's restaurant. And I went to the McDonald's, and I was ordering a ice cream shake there. And the man on the other side, who was working at the cash register and taking the order, looked into my eyes and said, I would like to do this greeting that we normally do on my planet with you. And I looked into his eyes, and with this kind of feeling, can I trust this man? And his eyes looked pretty pure and okay. So we did this greeting over the cash register at McDonald's, and I felt that his willpower was much stronger than mine. And he started literally taking all of my spiritual power, all of my mind. I was losing complete control of everything. And it felt like I was going to be banished into eternal darkness or into a deep dark hell for many, many years, while he would take control of all of the spiritual power that I'd gained over incarnations or whatever. I don't know exactly how these things work, but all I know is it didn't feel nice. And in that moment, I said, Om Guru. And as I said Om Guru, pop, our spiritual eyes popped apart and the magnetism broke. But I was still looking deeply into his eyes. And we could read each other's minds at that point. And I was just thinking, I should have never trusted you. And he was thinking, darn, I almost had you. I almost had all of your power to be mine to use as I would have wished to use. And then we just kind of faded away. But I'll never forget that look in his eyes. He had these blue, they were magical eyes, but they were being used for darkness. And I was so grateful for having a guru in this incarnation, that it's the guru's power who can keep us safe. And we must have a guru as we walk the spiritual path, that it's very important. It's very important to have people who can protect us from these negative things, that as you grow spiritually into the light, that the dark side, it also grows. But you don't have to be afraid of it. That as you're becoming more powerful in the light, number one, remember, it's not your power. Remember where your power comes from, that it comes from God, it comes from the Guru, and that you're merely a channel for light and for good. And then even though dark things may happen around you or even to you, you don't have to be affected by them. That on the inside, you can always hold on to your inner peace and your inner joy no matter what. And the thing that I wanted to talk about here, and then we'll wrap up, is that Jesus was tempted when he went up on the mountain, and that Satan came to him and tried to tempt him to eat food. But in the spiritual state that Christ was in, that he knew he was well beyond food, and he knew that Satan was trying to bring him back down to a level that he had already accomplished. And he said, "Get thee behind me, Satan." And that we too, we have to, and this probably more happened in consciousness than anything else, because as we go deep in meditation, that negative thoughts will come, but we have to learn how to push out all thoughts so that we can just resolutely keep our mind on God alone, God alone. And it's the purpose of life, it's the purpose of meditation, it's the purpose of everything that we do. So we too can gain that power that Christ had to really push away all thoughts of darkness and to learn how to live in the spine on a higher and higher level of consciousness until one day all efforts will end in ease, and we will achieve a state of nirvikalpa samadhi where nothing can ever touch us ever again. We won't even have to worry about the dark side at all, because we are eternally safe on the lap of Divine Mother, in the arms of the Guru, forever and ever. So take heart in that as Christ overcame, we too will overcome. And it is our destiny to live in ever-conscious, ever-new bliss, forever and ever. I look forward to seeing each other next week, and may God bless you.